In a previous video, we took a look at combat prayer uptimes, and in this video, we'll take a look at the replay to see if anybody was out of position and if that was what caused these lower uptimes. So I've taken note of these players. In particular, we'll take a look at player number 13 and player number 6 who had the two lowest uptimes. So we'll scroll up and go to our replay here. We'll wait for that to load in. And now if we click play, our players will appear on the map, and we can see we have Captain for All here in the square. We have our two tanks, and then we have our DPS and healer on the left, healer on the right. So we can see our stacks are starting to form here. We have our DK, and I think somebody just left to go into the boat, so let's maybe roll that back a second here just to see our stacks. And we can see our Nightblade is actually just underneath the Dragon Knight, so they're stacked up for the start of the fight here. And then our Necromancer is right up close to the boss, so that's good. They are in position. But we have this Nightblade here, and that's player 6, one of the ones who had the low combat prayer uptime, is really far back and actually beside the Warden Healer. So our Warden Healer would have to cast one combat prayer forward and one directly to the right. And also they wouldn't be standing in any healing springs or any other ground heals that the Warden is placing down in front of them because they're so far back. So either the Warden would have to move back, which risks getting shocking conduits all the way to the back of the arena, or you should tell the Nightblade here to move a little bit closer to the group to stop that from happening. And then on the right here, we have our Templar healer facing forward here. Their combat prayer would be hitting this Sork and likely this Dragon Knight here. But because the stacks are so spread apart, you would ideally want the Sork to be a little bit closer, maybe about right here, so that the Templar could be standing here and getting one combat prayer cast on all four players. So these two players, great positioning. This Sork, so-so on the positioning, and this Nightblade is really far out of positioning, and it shows in their combat prayer uptimes. So let's click play, and we can see our Warden Healer is running around a little bit, maybe just trying to make sure they're healing all of their players on their side. And we can see where they're pointing as well. You can see if you're not a healer, just know that typically the healers are pointing between them towards the boss or the tank and their stack. So if you're not standing in between them, you are not getting heals, you are not getting your combat prayer buffs. You can see on the right side as well, our Templar healer is running around quite a bit, trying to make sure they get heals on both of the stacks that are forming. This gap is growing quite a bit, so you may want to remind these sorcerers that are on the outside to make sure that they stay a little bit more inwards. And likewise, we have these Nightblades that are running around a little bit. This Warden Healer is chasing everybody around. And we got a shocking conduit if we just scroll back a little bit. I guess we just missed it there, but we saw there's a shocking conduit fairly far back, and that's because the Templar healer is having to stand far back to heal. We can scroll through the fight, and we see, wow, look at these stacks. So we have our conduit here. No reason for this player to be all the way out. They could be standing back in their original position, hitting the conduit. This Nightblade obviously turned to help with the conduit. This Nightblade is all the way to the left for some reason, not hitting the conduit most likely, because they're facing the boss still. So they're not helping with the conduit. They're not getting combat prayer because they are not in front of the healer. So they're quite far out of position. So these are just some of the things you want to be looking for. And one thing I didn't mention, but throughout the fight, you might have been noticing that these buff icons will show here. So we could even be looking at the individual player throughout the fight, and we can see when combat prayer actually shows up.